How did the girl witness the French army suffer a devastating defeat at Dunkirk? On the morning the sky turned gray over Dunkirk, Claire Moreau stood on the edge of the beach and felt as if the whole world had been pushed to the sea. She was a young French woman from a small town not far from the coast. Old enough to understand fear, but still too young to believe that an entire army could break apart before her eyes. For days, rumors had moved faster than the soldiers. The Germans were coming, the roads were blocked. The British were retreating, the French were surrounded, and the sea was the only way out. At first, Claire did not believe all of it. Armies were supposed to have maps, generals, guns, trucks, and plans. Soldiers were supposed to march forward, not drift backward like exhausted ghosts. But when she reached the dunes outside Dunkirk and looked down toward the shore, she saw the truth with her own eyes. The beach was covered with men. Thousands of soldiers stretched across the sand in long, broken lines. Some stood silently with rifles hanging from their shoulders. Some sat with their heads down, too tired to speak. Some lay on coats or blankets, waiting for medics who might never come. Their uniforms were stained with mud, smoke, and seawater. British soldiers, French soldiers, Belgian and other allied men were packed together beneath a sky that seemed to press down on them. There was no victory in their faces. There was only exhaustion, confusion, and the desperate hope that a boat, any boat, would come before the enemy did. Claire had seen French troops before. A week earlier, they had passed through nearby roads with trucks, horses, field guns, and officers shouting orders. They still looked like an army then. Now, many of them looked like men who had walked out of a nightmare. Their boots were torn. Their coats were heavy with dust. Some had thrown away equipment they could no longer carry. Others clutched the last things that still made them feel like soldiers. A helmet, a rifle, a water canteen, a photograph folded inside a pocket. She stood frozen above the beach, unable to move. Inland, Dunkirk was burning. Thick columns of black smoke rose from the town and drifted across the shore. The streets behind her were full of shattered windows, abandoned vehicles, and civilians dragging what they could carry. Military trucks had been left at odd angles, some with flat tires. Some burned, some still loaded with supplies that no one had time to unload. The sound of engines, shouting, and distant explosions rolled through the air without pause. Then the aircraft came. At first, Claire heard them before she saw them. A low, violent growl spread across the sky. Men on the beach began to look up. Some crouched. Some threw themselves flat against the sand. Others were too tired even to move. Claire followed their eyes and saw dark shapes cutting through the clouds. German planes descended toward the beach and harbor with terrible speed. The first bombs fell near the town. The ground shook under Claire's feet. A building behind the harbor burst open in a cloud of brick and dust. A wave of sound struck the beach, and thousands of men lowered their heads. As smoke rolled over them, more bombs followed, closer this time. Sand jumped into the air. Water rose in tall white columns near the ships offshore. The waiting lines broke for a moment as men scattered, then slowly reformed because there was nowhere else to go. That was what terrified Claire most. Not only the bombs, not only the planes. It was the fact that the soldiers stayed. They stayed because the sea was their only chance. Beyond the surf, ships and small boats struggled toward the coast. Some were military vessels. Others looked too small to belong in a war. Fishing boats, lifeboats, little civilian craft from across the channel. They moved through smoke and shell bursts as if pulled by a force stronger than fear. Every time one reached the shallows, soldiers pushed toward it, careful not to turn the waiting lines into a mob. Officers shouted. Sailors waved. Men waded into the cold water up to their knees, then their waists, holding rifles above their heads or helping the wounded move forward. Claire descended from the dunes and stepped onto the beach. The sand was churned by thousands of boots. Empty tins, broken crates, torn straps, and discarded packs lay everywhere. She saw a French soldier sitting beside an abandoned truck, his face gray with fatigue. He could not have been much older than her brother. His left sleeve was dark and stiff, and he was staring at the sea as if he no longer trusted it to be real. Claire approached him carefully. He looked up only when her shadow fell across his boots. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then she noticed his canteen was empty. She had brought a small container of water from a damaged supply cart near the road. She knelt, poured a little into a dented cup, and offered it to him. His hands shook so badly that she had to hold the cup steady while he drank. Around them, the beach continued to tremble. The French soldier swallowed, closed his eyes, and breathed as if the water had brought him back from somewhere far away. Claire asked where his unit was, but he only glanced toward the endless lines and shook his head. His answer was in the silence. Units had been split apart. Roads had collapsed into panic. Orders had changed faster than men could follow them. Some soldiers had marched for days under attack. Others had fought delaying actions to keep the evacuation alive. The army had not simply retreated, it had been torn, scattered, and compressed into this narrow strip of sand. Claire helped him sit straighter. She wanted to do more, but the beach was full of men who needed help. She moved from one place to another with the water container, offering small drinks to those who looked closest to collapse. Some thanked her with a nod. Some stared through her as if she were part of a dream. Some asked whether the boats were still coming. She always said yes, even when she was afraid the answer might not be true. The sky darkened again. More aircraft roared overhead. This time the bombs struck closer to the harbor. Flames climbed from storage buildings. Smoke covered the sun until the whole beach seemed trapped inside a dim, burning afternoon. Men threw themselves down. Claire dropped beside a sand ridge and pressed her arms over her head. The sound of the explosions was so large that it seemed to erase thought itself. Sand struck her face. Her ears rang. Somewhere nearby, men cried out, but the noise of engines swallowed their voices. When she lifted her head, the lines were moving again. That was the impossible thing. The soldiers kept moving. Slowly, painfully, unevenly, but they moved.